big news today. So Duke Johnson goes to the Texans for a conditional 4th-round pick, could be a 3rd-round pick in 2020. I think it's fair compensation for what his situation was. I like the trade for both sides. Fantasy-wise, though, I don't just like this for Nick Chubb. I love this for Nick Chubb. Heath, I know you're with me. Tell me about Nick Chubb now. What does he mean for fantasy football managers?
We're talking about a guy who was a top 8 running back as soon as he took over the starting job in Cleveland last year, and we have a little bit 2 concerns. One, would Duke Johnson take all the work in the passing game? 2, what happens when Kareem Hunt shows up? Now we only have one of those concerns. I think you said it this morning on the podcast, Jamie. He might be the #1 running back in fantasy when we get to week 9. That becomes more possible now. I'm not going to call it yet, but I will say in non-PPR, he's gone up to my #5 running back. In PPR, he is now a top 10 running back. I do think you take him in the 1st round in non-PPR drafts. I expect him to get 20-plus touches per game until Hunt shows up. And then I don't know that when Kareem Hunt shows up, he's going to take more than 5 or 6 touches per game. Maybe he takes 10 and Chubb's all the way down to 17, 16, 17. I'm fine with that. Give me those 8 weeks of top 5.
And I think that's the way you have to approach it. Is like, we talk about this with streaming DSTs to start the season, quarterbacks that have good matchups, tight ends that have good matchups, and he's got 8 games of really, for now. I don't think we're going into the season with Dontrell Hilliard as their #2 running back. I think there's going to be another move. We've seen John Dorsey be very aggressive on both sides, trading away Carlos Hyde, trading for, or signing Kareem Hunt. He's not been afraid to make moves, and including this one. So let's just assume that it is Hilliard for now. Nick Chubb gets that opportunity for those first 8 games. Remember, it's week 10 that Kareem Hunt is eligible to play because their bye week is mixed in there. So I think, for me, what I struggle with Chubb is comparing him to David Johnson and James Conner, because that's right now 5 and 6 for me. I moved him to 7 in both formats, and I agree with you, Heath. In non-PPR, he is a 1st-round pick. So, Dave, I don't think you're sharing that same enthusiasm for Nick Chubb right now.
No, but I'm hearing you guys on this. And if you're right about the touches that Nick Chubb is going to get after Kareem Hunt's suspension is over.
But you forget about that, though.
But okay. Just pump the brakes for a second here, because I'd be surprised if Nick Chubb dominated touches Ezekiel Elliott style for the first 8 weeks of the season. There's going to be somebody else there. It's not going to be much, but they're going to take something away from Nick Chubb. It doesn't mean he's not a good running back. He's still a great running back. I love him. But I don't know if I can spend the 1st-round capital on him, knowing that there is going to be somebody in the first 8 weeks. Doesn't have to be big, like I said. And when Kareem Hunt comes back, he's going to have something. It could be as many as 10 touches. That could be it. If they're in the playoff hunt and they're winning games in the second half, they're going to take Nick Chubb off the field.
Okay,
and Kareem Hunt is going to get a lot of work.
Let's just compare him to one guy that we're all saying is a top 4 overall selection. Is he going to get less work than Alvin Kamara? When Kareem Hunt,
he'll get more touches than Kamara, guaranteed.
He'll get more touches than Kamara, but I think Kamara will be more efficient.
I would say Kamara in PPR will be more efficient than Nick Chubb. Yes. Non-PPR, I'm not sure.
In terms of another player taking the starter off the field, Kamara is going to lose. But now the other 3 guys don't. Not necessarily, at least that's what we've seen so far. But I think when we're hearing Jalen Samuels taking work away from James Conner, maybe Benny Snell as well. Joe Mixon, there's the Giovanni Bernard factor, plus not a very good team. When you look at David Johnson, there's some uncertainty there when you're factoring in rookie head coach, rookie quarterback. And so Nick Chubb has shown us that he could be very good and in some cases dominant, and now has this opportunity for an 8-game window. And I've said, I'm going to be consistent on this. When you draft Nick Chubb, before the Duke Johnson trade, after the Duke Johnson trade, you have to factor in what Kareem Hunt may take away. But now there's one less mouth to feed for those first 8 games, and he could just be so awesome and continue to be awesome. We don't know. Could come back to bite. Sorry, so let's look at the other side of this. So you have, obviously the winner here is Nick Chubb, I think, across the board. Then the loser is Lamar Miller, because he had this short window of no Deontay Foreman and looking like he's going to be the guy. We're going to see who the backup is. The Texans make the trade. I think it's a good move for them because Lamar Miller needs some help. So Miller now gets competition for touches in some capacity. This is clearly the toughest guy he's had to share the field with, because Alfred Blue's not necessarily the same caliber of a pass catcher that Duke Johnson is. We know Deontay Foreman for that stretch was fine, but he had the Achilles tear. So how does this impact Lamar Miller? How far have you guys dropped him?
I'm not dropping him at all, because I never really liked Lamar Miller in the first place. He's a round 6 type of running back for me. And the Texans have said all along they want a pass-catching element in their backfield. They just couldn't really find one until now, and now they've got Duke Johnson. I think they still like Lamar Miller. I still think he's going to get you 230 touches over the year, but I don't think he's very spectacular. And I think Duke Johnson's going to take away any upside he might have had in the catching game once they traded away Deontay Foreman.
I appreciate this because he was starting to move into the 5th round, and I wasn't getting him on my 0 running back teams. So now he'll fall back into the 6th or 7th round. He'll be available. Maybe I can get Tevin Coleman and Lamar Miller as my dream running back setup for those teams. In all seriousness, that's my dream scenario.
That sounds like a
Tevin Coleman, Lamar Miller, and 3 top 15 wide receivers. Okay. In all seriousness, I don't know how. He was always going to share work to a certain extent. At least I don't have to worry about Duke Johnson taking short yardage work away from him. I might feel slightly more comfortable that he has a chance to not score 6 touchdowns for the first time in 3 years. He might score 7 this year. And they don't really throw the ball to their running backs very much. I don't know if this is great for Duke Johnson.
To be fair, they've never had a guy like this before.
That's true.
So when you're talking about the running backs that we've seen, Alfred Blue and the like, and Foreman's not a profile, doesn't profile as a pass catcher. That's what this guy does.
But they need a 6th guy to block.
They do need a 6th guy to block. They do seem to like Holly Warren, to fill in a little bit more as at least some help at the tight end position. But I mean, this is a downgrade for Kiki QT. It's a downgrade in some cases for the other wide receivers. Not that you're not taking DeAndre Hopkins in the 1st round, but if you are considering Devontae Adams or Hopkins or Julio and Hopkins, it may make you change your mind a little bit because they're going to throw a little bit more to the backs. That's what Bill O'Brien has said he wanted to do. So Lamar Miller, did you downgrade him at all? I dropped him from where I had him. I think just a borderline number 2 guy. Now he's closer to where I was originally with him, close to 30.
I think I'd moved him up to 25, and now he's 28. A little bit lower in PPR because he's not going to catch more than 20 passes. But yeah, he's still an excellent target for me in the 6th or 7th round.
And the guy who obviously moved, who we had to talk about, is Duke Johnson. So where does he sort of fall in now with this move? It's clearly an upgrade, obviously, going from being buried in Cleveland's depth chart, pre-hunt, post-hunt, he was not going to be a very good fantasy option, but now he has a chance to actually touch the ball a little bit more.
I will say it's a downgrade for the first 8 weeks of the season because they've averaged 15% of their targets going to running backs the last 3 years, even less when Deshaun Watson's been throwing the ball. And maybe they'll throw it more to Duke Johnson, but Cleveland focused on that position in the passing game.
Just to clarify what you're saying, downgrade for him over the first 8 weeks of the season because he would have not had Kareem Hunt on the field with him until the suspension goes.
The upgrade is if something happens to Lamar Miller, I think he has a clearer path to actually maybe getting a chance to be a running back.
Yeah, you look at him in round 9 or round 10 in PPR. A little bit later than that in non-PPR. He's almost a handcuff to Lamar Miller in non-PPR. Sure. Can't get excited about having him on my team there, but I think he can get close to 50 catches in this offense, the way it's seated now, and it stinks for Kiki QT. I'm a QT guy. I liked him a lot. I think this is frustrating for him. He also falls into the double-digit rounds.
I like that you think of yourself as a QT guy.
My wife thinks so, too.
She should.
She's the only one.
I think you look at where Duke Johnson falls, because we talk about these pass-catching running backs a lot. He's not in the James White, Tariq Cohen caliber. Last year we saw guys like Jalen Richard, obviously Theo Riddick over the last couple of years. I think he's in that group. He's kind of been in that group to begin with. But this, I think, gives him some standalone value in PPR. Again, I know what you're saying, Heath, that they haven't done it as much in the Deshaun Watson tenure, but maybe they changed some things. And Bill O'Brien, once upon a time, calling plays in New England, used to use the running backs out of the backfield quite a bit. So maybe he gets back to doing that a little bit more. So we're going to talk about this a lot throughout the show. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of questions. Keep sending us again on Twitter at FF Today.